It is officially fall season, and now more than ever, I desire to make a polymer clay trinket. And I'm going to show you guys the process of how I went about doing that and how you can do your version too. I'm going to start with rolling out the clay, and I'm going to try to pop little air bubbles that I may see here and there. But mainly, I'm going to condition the clay, which means to work it with your hands so that it's not stiff and dry as it usually would be when you come straight out and cut it. I made myself a little ball of foil, aluminum foil to be exact, and then I cover it over with the clay with those thin sliced pieces that I did. And this is how I get the shape without having to use too much clay, because we all know that it can be a little bit expensive. I'm using the Sculpey original clay. Now, to get a firm, stronger polymer clay, especially if you want to sell these pieces, I would recommend the Sculpey Primo clay. I haven't personally used it yet, but I did purchase it and it's there for me. This right now are the practice pieces that I'm doing, and once I get the hang of it and don't feel it's so overwhelming to do clay sculptures, I will go ahead and move on to the Primo. I dug little holes to make sure I get the positioning of the eyes and the nose correctly. Now you're going to see that I am going to work a whole eyes features here, and it's going to be for nothing, because once I bake it again, I'm going to decide that I want to do a new eye shape, bigger eye shape. So yes, just bear with me, but at least you can see how I kind of work it to blend it in with the rest of the clay. So this whole cat is inspired by the fall season. I wanted to add a couple details like pumpkins and candy corn, which is my favorite seasonal candy. And I wanted to make it functional, so I wanted to add an area where I could put in maybe little candies in there or jewelry if I had jewelry. I don't use a lot of jewelry, honestly. But yes, it can be used as a trinket dish. It can be used for many purposes, whatever you choose. But it's going to be your own style and your own DIY for your space. I finally used this tool to create some little whiskers. And then I carved out a little hole on top because I wanted to have something that I could hold the pumpkin in, something that would be a little bit more substantial than just gluing the pumpkin on. Then I went on to carve a little bit of the ears. I could have left it just like that, but I just wanted to add a little bit more definition. And probably my most favorite and used tool in the set that I got for this polymer clay sculpting kit is the little rolling ball. It's probably like one of the best things. It's very efficient when it comes to like blending in the polymer clay with other existing polymer clay, as you see here. Then I was just playing around and carving in a little bit of hairs and stuff. I didn't like that too much, but you'll see how I use that little ball tool to just carve in a little bit more. And right there is when I kind of liked it a little bit better. It's very imperfect, but I, again, love the style of the imperfection. So now I'm going to start making the little candy corn and the pumpkin. I'm going to set it aside and bake it, and then I'll paint it separately, and I'll add it on to the cat later on with gel glue, Gorilla Gel glue to be exact. And here's a tip: if you feel a little bit intimidated by using polymer clay, you could get these little toy kits of Play-Doh clay and work your way towards it, so you know how to kind of create different shapes and stuff. I kind of intuitively did the pumpkin, which was kind of fascinating to see that I was so comfortable creating a pumpkin out of polymer clay. I can't say the same thing when it comes to like the full sculpt of the cat. It's very intimidating for me. And you're gonna see in this piece I do add like larger eyes, and yes, it's gonna make the cat look extremely creepy. It wasn't necessarily my intention, I'm gonna be honest about that, but I just wanted the eyes to be kind of big. It's a stylized cat, it's not meant to look realistic, but the eyes were a big focal point and I wanted to make sure to keep that. The earlier beady little eyes just wasn't doing it for me. And doing the eyelids over the eyes is just so satisfying for me. This is actually one of my favorite parts of doing a sculpture, is the eyes. And also when I get to paint the eyes. Then I'm gonna finesse the eyes with that little rolling thingy and just kind of make it a shape that's a little bit more interesting and kind of the way that I want it. And honestly, when you're doing these DIYs, you want to do something that is how you like it to your taste, because it's gonna be for you, and it's gonna be a something that you can feel proud of that you did yourself versus just buying it in the store. I don't think I'll ever actually really do any realistic sculpting when it comes with, when it comes to polymer clay sculptures, because I like the stylized version of things. I like things to look a little bit goofy, a little bit kind of like amateurish with the textures that you get and stuff. And so I think that's gonna be my style more or less. But you know what they say never. So yeah, there we go. I just find that when you work it to perfection, it kind of looks more like a product that was mass produced rather than a product that was handmade. And that's kind of the look that I'm going for. It's like this handmade, imperfect look, but still intriguing, still some skill involved in it. So here I added little strips of clay to create like a little bit of a hair going crazy over there. And then I added that little tool to create some type of little inserts in the hair to make it look more convincing. And yeah, I think that was pretty cool. I added that. I wish I added it to the sides of the face, but unfortunately I didn't. But hey, you live and learn. And now it's time to paint. Painting is quite possibly for me the favorite part of doing a sculpture, because at this point, kind of like I've eased my way into it. I have relief that I created the sculpture. Everything's baked, everything's done. Now it's just the fun part, which is painting, which is what I normally do anyways. Maybe that'll change later on when I get a little bit more comfortable with clay sculptures, but right now they are extremely intimidating for me. Sometimes I even feel myself like panicking as I'm doing it because I just don't have that skill set yet. So let's just enjoy the process of painting now that it's done. Okay, so I wanted to ask you guys if you would be interested in me creating little fall earrings, because I want to do that and I actually want to put those for sale on my Etsy shop. So yeah, let me know down below. I think I'm gonna do them of little cats or something similar to the style that I'm going for here. So right here, I'm going to add the color, and the color kind of varies into these light blues and purples. And I wanted to make that intentionally not black because I just thought that aesthetically wise, the color scheme of purple and orange would look a lot better than just drawing a black cat with orange accents to it, like the pumpkin and candy corn and such. And because I add large chunks of paint over this, and I have to because there's just so many creases in here, it also helps to be able to blend it later on. Now, you always have to work fast with acrylic paint, and I'm very well aware of that when I'm doing it. But the good thing is that when you do chunks like that, just to cover the creases, you are able to go back quickly, but go back and blend in with the other colors. Now that being said, be warned, it actually feels like it dries a lot quicker when you're painting polymer clay versus painting a canvas. So take that into account if you're doing thin layers. Now when you're doing your own trinket dish, if you want to make it a little bit sturdier, you can actually use UV resin or epoxy resin to cover it. Place it under UV light, and then it's going to be a lot sturdier than just having it like this. Personally, for me, in these situations, I like the matted look, and it gives kind of like that glossy acrylic look when you put resin over it that I just don't necessarily enjoy for this type of project. So I'm going to leave it like that. Plus, I don't have UV resin right now, and I don't feel like buying it. I do, however, see on Etsy though that a lot of people do use the UV resin to make it sturdier, but again, you kind of compromise the look that you're going for. So I would suggest if you're gonna paint these and sell them, then try to put a note, a care instructions kit or something to that extent where you let the buyer know that this is polymer clay and it is a fragile sculpture. So you want to make sure to give them ideas on how to take care of it and how to be careful with it. Also, packaging when you're shipping it, it's extremely important. And just to go back to the painting process, usually in the first layers, I'm not too careful because again, you'll see that I go back and fix a lot of things, especially when you're not dealing with a flat canvas and you're dealing with so many like creases and like sharp angles and stuff that you just inevitably get paint on places that you don't want to get paint in. So I'm not going to overstress myself on painting it perfectly in the first layers. In the second layers, I will be a little bit more careful and take my time more when I'm doing it. And again, this is my favorite part, the eyes. I just love doing the eyes and adding the little details to make it expressive. In this one, I kind of forgot to do the highlights in the eyes. I should have, but I didn't. Either way, it's your project. You can always go back and do it. I wanted to add like different colors to the eyes and not just one color. And I wanted to make the pupils red because again, I thought that black would make it a little bit dull. Adding red to it just makes it more complementary with the whole color scheme that's going on. And here I tried to do whiskers, but then I took them off because I had too much water in my acrylic paint and it was getting watery and just didn't look good. It looked muddy. So I just erased those and went back with it with a thicker hand of paint. By the way, guys, let me know your favorite season down below. You know, fall was actually not one of my favorite seasons at all until I watched a lot of YouTube videos and then I saw the romanticization of fall with all the beautiful colors and themes, and I really enjoy it now, whereas before it was actually one of my least favorite seasons. Now I live down here in Florida, so winter is not really winter for us here. It's just the holidays that remind us of winter here, but it only gets cold around January, the start of January and February. Other than that, it feels like summer most of the year. But I think if I had to decorate my house as one theme, I think it would probably be like a fall farmhouse theme sort of look to it, because it's just the colors are just so warm and inviting and just so cozy to sit by the fire. If you have a fire, if you need a fire, because in Florida you don't need a fire, but if you just sit around in the fire in the light of the candles, so romantic, so beautiful to read a wonderful book. I'm just enthralled with this season where I wasn't like that before. So like I mentioned before, I use Gorilla Gel glue and I actually cut a tips of Q-tips because really you don't need anything that's too strong because this is not, you're not lifting heavy weights here. So I used that to add the pumpkin and give it a little bit of a standout without adding it directly to the cat. And then I used the gel to add a couple of candy corns here and there. These candy corns, I originally was gonna have them inside the trinket in the back, but I realized that just leaves cut space for the things that you're gonna put there, and it just looked more interesting in the front. So here is the reveal.